viewers, welcome once again to the world according to Yoni. Or if it's your first time here, welcome to the world according to me. I'm Yoni. I have a wonderful show today. I've got, a lot to talk about, but I'm going to save that for the end. My guest today is one of the finest character actors in the country. You know his face, you probably don't know his name. And that's the way it is with character actors. They have these recognizable faces because in every film, television show they're in, they support the leads and they make them look better. And that's exactly what my guest, Stephen Tobolowsky, does. You will recognize him immediately. You can't miss his face, his voice. He's been in Groundhog Day, Californication, the Goldbergs on ABC, but in a career that has gone through from the 1980s, this man has been in over 200 television and film productions, as well as being a Tony nominee for the revival of the show Mornings at 7. Stephen is a great guy and a lot of fun, and we talked so long that once again, this is going to be a two-part episode. Now, I've noticed that when I do these two-parters, like with Louis Stadlin and Steven Stoliar, more people watch the first episode than they do the second, which confuses me because there's just as much, if not more, information and fun in the second episode than the first. So I don't really get it. It's interesting. Less people watch on my YouTube channel, less people listen to the podcast version than listen to the first. All we're doing is cutting them in half because I get to speak to these fascinating, interesting people, and I get to share that with you. So, stick around, come back next week and watch or listen to the show because these guys are pretty amazing. And Stephen Tobolowsky really falls into that category. I think you're going to enjoy him. So anyway, without further ado, here's my conversation with Stephen Tobolowsky.
Hi, Stephen. See, that was well done, wasn't it?
That was about as good an introduction as I've ever had.
Yeah, well, I already did the other part anyway, so it's good. How does it feel? I mean, I consider myself a character actor, and most of my favorite actors are character actors. But how does it feel to be the face that people recognize immediately and they go, what's that guy's name?
Yeah, what's in a name? My wife and I, wait, I'm going to clear my throat. I just ate a peanut butter sandwich, so vocally I'm not really strong today.
I just had challah French toast, so.
I had challah peanut butter sandwich.
There you go.
Yeah, my wife makes challah every Friday. So anyway, we went to North Dakota, and in North Dakota, they give you free pie everywhere. Everywhere you go, they advertise free pie. So I'm in there ordering my free pie, and the waitress came up to me and said, has anybody ever told you, you look like that guy that's in the movies? And I said, yes, people have told me that I do look like the guy in the movies. And she says, no, I'm serious. You could make a living imitating him. And my wife, Ann, says he does actually. Part of his living is imitating the guy that's in the movies.
Oh, God.
So, but I was going to get, the point is, I was going to get the free pie, whether I was the guy in the movies or not.
Maybe
and that's
you would have gotten an extra piece.
I could have gotten all I wanted. In North Dakota, you get all the free pie. I'm just saying, people don't have to know your name for you to get free pie. That's the way life is.
That's important, I think.
That's very important. Very important.
But I mean, because over the last week, I've been telling people, yeah, I'm going to speak to Stephen Tobolowsky on Monday. And they're like, who? I'm like, okay.
There's an advantage to that, don't you think?
I don't know. I mean, in your case, you have worked about as much as any actor I know. So yeah, there's a great advantage. Who cares?
You have to separate this one. I did career day at Beverly Hills High School. It was me and another guy. And the other guy who was doing career day is a guy who does amateur theater in Los Angeles, but he really is a real estate guy, is what his job is, but he does a lot of amateur theater. So he was the first person to get up, and he was talking, we were talking to a room of about 120, 130 students, kids, about career day. And he was talking about how great it is to be an actor, how wonderful it is to be an actor, and the life of the actor, and all of this. And everyone was very excited, and it was all really a sweet, kind of touchy-feely kind of speech. And I got up and I said, and he is in real estate. Remember, he is in real estate. I said, let me ask you all a question. How many of you would be want to be in show business because you could be rich and famous? Everybody raised their hand. Like, it's so awesome to see just 130 hands just shoot up in the air all at once. I go, how many of you would still want to be an actor if you weren't rich and famous? In fact, that maybe you had to work at a second job while you're trying to get money to audition. And maybe the only thing you can do is work in free theater at night that is never reviewed. Your name is never in the paper. But you still go and you go to performance after performance after performance, show after show after show, still following that dream. Maybe you have to raise a family on the side and have 2 or 3 jobs to have the money to support that family. How many of you want to be actors? 2 girls raised their hand. And I said, you're the only 2 that are going to make it.
You know, that reminds me of one of my favorite stories, because freshman year of college, they put all the new acting students in a class with one of the acting teachers. And the acting teacher who I was with had attempted a professional career, did not make it, and he was just telling horror stories about the industry. And he was ironically, he was telling a horror story about this friend of his who was this brilliant actress who could do anything. And because she didn't have the right look, she'd never make it in the movies. That actress's name was Jill Clayburgh.
Oh, well.
So, you know, but for 3 hours, he pounded away at how bad the industry was. And at the end, 13 out of 15 acting majors changed their major to theater education. My friend Rick and I were the only ones left who stayed with the acting department.
You know, I was doing the movie The Insider, and I had a scene with someone who is very good and very famous, Al Pacino, in that scene. And so at the end of the scene we were doing, Christopher Plummer was also in the scene, someone who's also very good and very famous. So Al and I were doing the postmortem that actors always do at the end of the scene. He goes, well, Stephen, what did you think about this moment when I was doing this? What did you which take did you like best? You know what I liked? I liked, you know, actors just talking about stuff. And while we're walking off the set, we're in New York City at the time, in a building very close to Central Park. Al takes off his jacket that he was wearing in the scene, puts on this shabby, dirty shirt, this torn overcoat, while he's talking to me. Then he gets a beard and he puts it over his ears. You know, this beard, this long beard. Then he gets broken glasses and puts them on his face. Then this ratty hat. And I go, Al, what are you doing? He goes, Stephen, I walk out these doors. I can't go anywhere I can't go anywhere. And not only that, when people see me on the street, they try to pick a fight so they can get a lawsuit against me. You know, there is a level of fame where you go, I get free stuff. And then comes the level of fame where people are always trying to sue you. So fame has to be separated from your job. Fame is not a, so when people don't recognize me and still give me free pie, when people don't recognize me, that's fine. And when people do recognize me, that's okay. And when they kind of go like, you were the guy in Groundhog Day, right? You know, you go like, yes. Oh, I love that movie. It's never substitute the idea of being recognizable or have people know who you are with something that's good. It's not necessarily good. And let me mention one other thing. You mentioned character actor. Character actor. You know, that phrase is only used in movies, really. They don't use it that much on television, and they never use it in theater. You never go up to the actor who's playing Polonius in Hamlet and go like, you're kind of a character actor, aren't you? No, nobody in theater is considered a character actor because we're all characters. We're all, that's what we all are doing. It's only something, a designation from movies to say that you don't get the girl. You're not going to be the one that gets the girl. You're going to be the friend or the friend of a friend, or even less. You know, you're going to be a plot point somewhere in the movie, but that's what you are, a role player. That's all it means.
But it's also that because let's face it, they like a lot of plastic, pretty boys and girls in leading roles in films. And they love to have great supporting actors who they know are going to make the other person look even better because of what they'll bring to it. I mean, Bill Murray's a hysterically funny guy, not off stage, but certainly when he's in front of a camera. You, as Ned Ryerson, and I mean, is that your most recognizable part? People
probably Ned Ryerson is, over the years, has been kind of number one, and kind of number two has kind of been Stu Beggs on Californication. If you go that route, probably.
And you did get the girl in there because you were stripping Pamela Adlon.
Oh, you can't beat stripping Pamela Adlon either. That's as good as it gets. And God, that was so much fun doing that show. But Californication, and then I would say an odd one is Sammy Jenkins in Memento, the Chris Nolan film. You know, people know me from that too, and those were all really good projects. Groundhog and Memento and Californication, really special projects. And again, the play is the thing. It's very hard to excel or something in a project that really isn't that good or that compelling, but all three of those are compelling.
Yeah, I understand completely. The next to last film I did, I was working opposite Eric Roberts, and Eric turned to me after our first scene together. You talk about the postmortem. Eric turned to me and said, "You're going to be very proud of this scene." And I'm like, you know, happiness is, because he was phenomenal. And what I had planned, I had planned my character for weeks before we got on set, and we get there and Eric's giving me stuff that's very different than what I had expected. So I just went with all of that and made my character so much better. And it's a crappy movie, but working with him was,
Eric's a very good actor, and I think that's a wise kind of move. You gotta just jump and play the scene as it is and not as you planned it. I was talking to one acting teacher last week, I think. I can't tell in the pandemic. And she was telling all of her students what you need to do is kind of like what you were intimating, like I've worked on my part for weeks. You have to know what your beats are. You have to know what you're going to do, have your action down, have everything down, have your performance kind of in your head. And so, you'll be prepared. And I go, yeah, but in the real world, that isn't the way it works.
Yep.
I was doing like a Miami, CSI Miami, whatever that show was. And I was playing a district attorney or some sort of lawyer. And I had a scene where I'm sitting, hey, I'm in a room like this in the scene with my law books behind me, with my desk in front of me, talking to the assistant lawyers and the people that we're going to talk to. It was this whole scene of me. And we blocked it out. I had everything in my head. And then the producer came running in and said, we've just lost the set. We have to get out to our cars right away. And the director said to me, guys, can we shoot this scene instead of in your office, handheld, running to our cars in the parking lot? And I go, sure. And so it was just handheld, us running to our cars. We got in our cars and we drove away. And that's what you have to do when you're really filming.
Yeah.
One thing I tell actors, and I don't know if it's true, but I tell them anyway. And that is, there's the difference between theater and film is that the hit of theater is reality, the simulation of reality. As an audience, we go into a theatrical production, we sit down, we know the actors have rehearsed. We know they're wearing costumes and makeup. We know all that, yet at the same time, if the performance really sings, if the performance really happens, we are transported into their reality, and we laugh and we cry, and sometimes we even stand up on our feet at the end and applaud. I saw Christopher Reeve do 5th of July, where he played the crippled man in that, to have Superman playing the crippled man. And we were all, it was a preview performance in New York, and the audience at the end of the play was in tears. Standing ovation, huge. We all ran back to the stage door to say, God, that was phenomenal. That's the hit of theater, is transporting the audience because of all that work and rehearsal and creating that reality that you could bring to the stage and you prepare it and it's there. Film is different because the audience knows that what they are seeing is manipulated. Every time there's an edit, every time a camera shot moves, every time there's music, we know, oh, there's been something moving here. That's why I get so kind of angry when I watch a horror film and I just see the shadow of the monster kind of reach for the doorknob. And I say, damn it, lift the camera up. Let me see the monster. Let me see the monster now. You're obviously out in the hallway with the monster. Let me see the monster. But no, they're not, because they want to open the door and have the monster there then. The hit of film is surprise. Mm-hmm. Because you cannot edit, well, you could ruin a film, but great directors put actors in a situation where they will be surprised, and that's captured on film, and that is amazing. That is what makes film spectacular. Here's a great little example. Humphrey Bogart in Casablanca looked at Ingrid Bergman and said, here's looking at you, kid. Total ad lib. And now that line is completely identified with Casablanca. Absolutely. But no, it was surprise. And the Ingrid Bergman's looking at him like, huh? What? That's not in the script. What? And it captures her, huh? And Humphrey Bogart just like looking at her and her beauty and just, here's looking at you, kid. And it captures surprise. So I love that Eric Roberts surprised you. I love that. And I love that you went with it. That's fantastic.
Oh, yeah. I mean, when you're working with good talent, you know that your job is to make them look as good as possible, and they're going to do the same for you. You create together, and that's what I got to do with him. I mean, there is a moment in Groundhog Day, it's your very last moment, when Andy McDowell says, "Oh, let's not spoil it."
Right.
And you do that thing, and I've tried to imitate that sound you made after you go, "I get it." Was that planned?
Now, here's the story of that, is that scene didn't really exist. So I'm at home. I finished my Ned Ryerson. I worked for 3 weeks. I did all my Ned Ryerson in the Street with Bill. And then I get a call from Trevor Albert, our executive producer. He says, we want to put more Ned in the movie. Can you come back out? And we were shooting outside of Chicago. So I'm going to fly from LA to Chicago. We're going to do another Ned scene. I go, okay. He says, well, we're working on it now. Just come on out. So I fly back out. I sit in my trailer and I said, so there's another Ned scene? And he says, we're working on it. We don't have the script yet, but we're working on it. It's going to be something at the auction that, we want to just tie your character back into the end of the film. I go, well, great. So I'm waiting for the Ned scene 1 day, 2 day, 3 day, 4 day. They're shooting the slave auction. And I'm going like, there's no Ned scene. I don't know what's going on. So while I'm waiting in my trailer, I write a Ned scene where I come in and try to tie everything together. This is great. I did all this insurance, and I used all the insurance things that my insurance guy tried to sell me. Fire, flood, death and dismemberment, all these different policies, and go, this is the greatest day of my life. And anyway, we're about to lose the set after a week. We're about to lose the Veterans of Foreign Wars Hall where we're shooting it. And so Harold Ramis called me in and said, we had about 2 hours left in the day. And he said, well, we want to do some scene. We don't really have anything yet. Maybe we could improvise something. And I said, well, I wrote a scene. So I show it to Harold Ramis. He goes, oh, this is fine. We could do this. And Bill said, let me look at it. So Bill looked at it, goes, yeah, we could do this. And he said, and at the end, I'll add a joke. And then Andy says, and I'll add a joke. Why ruin it? And let's just do it. And Bill says, and he says, let's give it one try, and then we're out. Then forget it. So we came in and we shot that scene, and I did not get writing credit for that scene at all. Nor have I gotten any residuals in terms as a writer. But I wrote that little scene in Groundhog Day, and Bill improvised we're going to do something else, and Andy said, why ruin it? And so that was actually a collaboration of kind of nothing, where we were all just kind of pretending to have a scene, and it worked.
Oh, but it worked beautifully. I mean, and you're right. It tied everything up for your character, and I think it's probably one of the reasons, other than you're getting decked or you're stepping into the puddle, that you're remembered for.
Well, one of the great moments of Groundhog Day, a beautiful moment, is completely improvised. And again, it came from Bill, of course. It's the final shot of the movie is that he and Andy are running out to see the town, and he lifts her up over the threshold and out into the world, and he jumps over the fence, and both are running down the street together. And that's because we were shooting that in a snowstorm, and it was very cold, and there are a lot of people on a crew. And so you rehearse a scene, there's 30 people's footprints in the snow. And so you have to wait for them to brush all of the footprints out of the snow to make another attempt. And when we originally rehearsed that scene, the snow did not have the gate closed. Bill could open the gate and he and Andy could run out of the gate. And then, but when we got to shooting it, the snow was so heavy, Bill runs up with Andy. The gate wouldn't open. He goes, screw it, in his head, lifts her up like crossing the threshold, lowers her to the other side. He jumps over the fence and goes, because he didn't want to reshoot it, because they knew they would have to brush all of the footprints out of there, and we were all cold as hell. And so that beautiful final moment was courtesy of Bill Murray and his improvising, and again, catching Andy completely by surprise, catching Harold Ramis by surprise. But the surprise is what makes that moment so beautiful.
Yeah. And because it's a real moment, it's and it's always funny to me in film, television, more so film, where you can create a moment that doesn't exist and it ends up being something that everybody remembers.
Yeah.
Those are the joyful things about acting on camera, at least for me. And I'm pretty sure for you.
Yeah.
So, but for the audience who, they go, I know that guy when they see your face and don't know. I mean, what is it? You've acted in over 200 films. I was going through your filmography and it was like, Jesus, God. I mean, you've been in everything. And then television, you did the original pilot for Buffy the Vampire Slayer as the school principal, which did not air, but that was you originally. And of course, the Goldbergs, where you're the principal intimidated by Mrs. Goldberg on a continuous basis. And
still doing that now. And I think I've been doing it for like 7 years, doing the principal on the Goldbergs. It's the thing, I remember the thing about Buffy, it was at that period of time where people were just calling me up saying, could you do this? Can you do this? I was under contract to do another show with ABC, I think Blue Skies, which was a Barry Kemp produced show. I was under contract with ABC to do that. And they said, we still want you to do the principal in Buffy, do the pilot. So I said, but I'm under contract to the other people. And so I ended up doing that knowing that I would never be in the series.
Wow.
Because it was with a different network and a whole different thing. But clearly, had I been in Buffy the Vampire Slayer, it would have been a much better job than being in Blue Skies.
You would have gotten eaten eventually.
I would have gotten eaten eventually, but after many, many years on television.
Yep. And residuals, boy.
Residuals. Oh, gosh. Yeah.
I just got a residual check for 39 cents. No, I'm sorry, 18 cents. And I'm like, I look at my wife and I go, they spent more sending this than the check.
I have you so beat.
Go ahead.
I have you so beat. I got a residual check for $0.00. It was so remarkable. Just like you, I had to call Columbia. Which now is Sony. I had to call them and say, wait a minute. Why did you send me this check for $0.00? And they said, well, because it's our policy that we round down to the nearest cent. So you made less than half a cent as a residual. So we rounded down to zero, but our tax people need us to cut the check. But at that time, in the Valley where I live, San Fernando Valley, there was a great bar called Residuals. And you could come into Residuals with your residual check for under $5. It had to be for under $5. They would put it on the wall, and bringing it in, they would give you a free drink. So for my $0.00 residual, I did get a free drink at Residual. So that was
almost as good as the free pie in North Dakota.
Almost. See, it's what you get for free.
Yeah. Now, one thing that I didn't realize, you're a Tony-nominated actor for Mornings at 7, which is interesting because I saw the 1970s production, and the guy who was starring in it and won the Tony for it that year wasn't there the night we went, and it's one of the only shows I have ever walked out of at intermission. It was so boring. And it's no, yeah. I mean, I literally
We may have to end this interview now, Yoni.
no, because it was not your production.
No. It's just such a great damn play. It's, that Mornings at 7 was nominated for Best Play the same year, I believe, as another play called Our Town by Thornton Wilder. And it was edged out by Our Town. It was an amazing experience doing that play. I don't know if this is the track you were going on. Are you interested about what happens when you're nominated for a Tony Award?
No, well, I mean, I've had several friends. Michael Cerveris, who's won 2 or 3 Tonys and nominated 4 times. Louis Stadlin, who was nominated twice, and he goddamn well should have won Best Actor in a Musical.
I'm not talking
74.
about winning. I'm talking about when you're nominated.
But the go your experience.
So here it is, 7:00 in the morning in New York City. Phone rings. It's my agent in Los Angeles. That means it has to be 4:00 in Los Angeles. Stephen, congratulations. Then another phone call, 7:05. My manager in Los Angeles, Stephen. Then the guy who handles our finances calls at 7:15. Stephen, congratulations. So all the business people, the people who aren't personal, but the business people call you up at dawn. And that's how you find out that you've been nominated for this thing. And I'm thinking like, oh, now none of your friends call you. It's all the business folk because they figure they got a piece of this pie.
Oh, yeah.
That's the thing. Then once you're nominated, you call your parents. Mom, Dad, I got great news. I've just been nominated for a Tony Award. Silence on the end of it. Oh, Stephen, what does that mean? Mom, it means on Broadway, it's an award. Dad goes, well, you don't have any chance of winning, do you? And I go, well, maybe I'm nominated at least, Dad. Well, thank you guys very much. Then it settles in on you about that evening that you have been nominated for a Tony Award and you have to come up with a speech. You have to. You have to come up with an acceptance speech. And so for the next 4 weeks, in every moment that's spare time when you're not doing the show, you're thinking, I want to thank all the people. No, that's terrible. Theater is all written on water. No, that's terrible. Everywhere you go, you're coming up with these terrible cliches of like, I want to thank all the people that made this. No, that's terrible. My wife and my babysitter for letting me. No, everything you come up with is like disastrous for speech. And then you begin to think that you're on this sort of Zen slide, that the more you work on your acceptance speech, the more likely you are to lose. It's that kind of thing in the universe. So maybe I won't work on my acceptance speech. And on my way to the theater, I'm always walking through Central Park, and there are people like walking through Central Park, always doing this. I go like, oh my God, I always thought they were crazy people, but maybe they're working on acceptance speeches. Maybe that's what's going on. So it is, for me, it ended up that we finished our show. I rushed over to Radio City. Was it Radio City I think it was Radio City where the Tonys are with my wife. She's wearing her prom dress and I'm wearing my tuxedo. And we go through, I lose. In fact, we were nominated for more Tony Awards than any straight show in history. 14 nominations for Mornings at 7. We lost all of them. And then my wife and I go out and have a very romantic dance at the party. It's 1 a.m. Let's go back to the theater and get our clothes. The theater's locked. Now we have no clothes. Now we're stuck in New York City with no clothes except prom dress and a tuxedo, and we're at Radio City Music Hall, and my keys to my apartment are in my pants at the theater.
Oh my God.
So now we have no way to get. Now we're homeless in New York City in prom dress and tuxedo. So we end up going to one of these little tiny motel-y things in the tuxedo. And I thought, okay, when the theater opens and we spend the night in one of these $80 a night motels, and we get together enough cash to between Ann and I, pocket cash, to get our room. And then the next morning, I have a voiceover audition in the 20s. So I have to walk in my tuxedo because I have no money for a cab now. So I have to walk
down to Chelsea. Oh, God.
I'm walking down to Chelsea in my tuxedo at 8 in the morning, 8:30 in the morning. When you walk in a tuxedo in New York City at 8 in the morning, it says one thing: I've been up all night. That's what that says. This guy's been partying all night. Then I go in and do like some Serta Sheep or some audition. I'm doing, so I'm doing some sort of voiceover audition in my tuxedo, right? At like 9 in the morning. And now Annie has gone to the theater. It's open. She's got the key to the apartment. She goes back up to the 80s to our apartment. And I walk from the 20s to the 80s through Central Park in my tuxedo. And there at Central Park are some of the actors who are also nominated for Tony Awards, and they're playing with their kids at Central Park, and they see me walking through there, and they go, "Damn, what party were you invited to? Why wasn't I invited?" Envy is at the heart of this business. And so that was like the Tony Award experience, but it was really wonderful. Than losing.
I've got to ask though, because I've never asked any of my friends who've been nominated before. What is it like to sit in that chair and the camera hits you, as they're announcing the nominees, and then they announce the winner, and you got to look, goody for you.
Oh, yeah. So we're seated on the aisle, so we have quick access to the stage. I had finally come up with my Tony Award speech was, none of this would be possible, certainly without the production, but without the work of my wife, who took care of our kids for the 9 months that I've been in New York, and she's been on. I want to thank her. I want to thank my parents and my baby. So anyway, I'm sitting. Before they let the audience in, they tell you which seats you're sitting in. So I'm sitting there, and then they have the producer of the Tony Awards comes out. He goes, "Okay, this is the deal. You're going to come up here, get up here as fast as you can, get your Tony Award, start your speech. We will not tolerate any speeches where you thank your wife, your parents, your babysitters. None of that bullshit. We're not doing that here." And I'm going like, oh no, I'm back to all theaters written on water. I'm back to, now I have to come up with a whole other speech. And I got to say, Rafe Fiennes was introducing Best featured actor, I think is what they call it.
Yeah, it is featured.
And he looked at me and he said, "The nominees this year are Stephen Tobolowsky." And he is the one person besides being a brilliant actor in everything the guy is in, one of the greatest actors, certainly of our generation, he was able to say my name without asking me for any, how do you say Tobolowsky? He said it. He said it perfectly. He said it beautifully. And he looked me right in the eye when he said it and then gave me a little smile. And and I wanted to go right on, right? I have one other little Zen Tony story, and that is the party afterwards. This is before I know that Ann and I are going to be homeless in New York, and we're dancing with one another. And one of the things when you do a show in New York, and especially on Broadway, is you see everyone you've ever known in your life. They come up to you, people that you went to grade school with in Texas, come to New York because you're in a play, and this is the guy I used to play tetherball with in Oak Cliff, Texas, and he's on Broadway. We have to go. And then they come back afterwards to see you. So at the Tony Awards, there was Gilbert Parker, who was the agent of my girlfriend many, many years ago, Beth Henley. When Beth and I were together, she decided she wanted to be a playwright, and she wrote this play, Crimes of the Heart, her first full-length play, which ended up winning the Pulitzer Prize for drama. Gilbert was her agent. And so when Beth and I were together, Gilbert and I were very close. He was a great friend. And Jeff Hunter of the Hunter Agency in New York, he was the guy who came to see me. I was doing a show in Buffalo, New York. And Mandy Patinkin's wife, Catherine Grody, I was doing the play with her, Kay Grody, and Catherine said, like, do you have an agent? And I go, well, not really. And she said, well, I'm going to call my agent because he should see you. So she called up Jeff Hunter. Jeff Hunter came from Manhattan, saw the show, Miss Firecracker contest that I did in Buffalo, called me up the next day from Manhattan and said, do you have an agent? And I go, no, sir. He says, well, you do now. This is what I want you to do. Next Monday, you're going to come into town. You're going to come see me. If you need a place to stay, I will give it to you. I will give you money, and we're going to have some auditions. I'm going to have auditions set up for you. And when I came in that Monday, he had 18 auditions set up for me.
Oh, my God.
And it began my entire career doing that Lort show in Buffalo that Jeff Hunter saw. And then from there, Jeff Hunter was my agent in New York. And then he joined DHKPR in Los Angeles. And so Triad became my agency in LA, and now eventually it's Innovative. So Jeff Hunter really started my career with coming out to Buffalo. He was at the Tony party. It was the first time I saw him in my life since I saw him on that trip to New York where he signed me and gave me all those auditions.
Wow.
And I said, Jeff, I have to thank you so much for what you did for my life. And he goes, who are you?
Oh, God.
And I go, I'm Stephen Tobolowsky. I was just in the play you saw. I was just nominated for the Tony Award. But none of this would be possible with it. And what did I do? You came to Buffalo, and you saw me in Miss Firecracker contest, and you signed me, and I told him the whole story. He goes, I did that? I go. He says, look, I'm sorry, I don't know who you are. I don't remember that story at all. But if I did something good, wow. I'm glad. And I go like, wow. Yeah. Exactly. So that's what happens at a Tony Award too, is you get to meet all the people that have all forgotten you in your life.
I believe me, I understand. The woman who ended up being my agent was, she had seen me in something, like 2 years before. And then I was teaching at a school in the city. It was an acting school, and I'm teaching acting, and I'm also running these audition seminars where the casting directors and agents would come in and let people do monologues and so on. And so this woman came in, and I was running the thing, and she remembered me, and she said, I thought you were so good, but I just didn't know what to do with you. And I was a little younger at the time, and I didn't have my beard on. So I was like, how about a young Dustin Hoffman? And she goes, yes, that's right. And that's how I got my agent, because I told her how to market me. Not that she did, but it's
everybody needs a little help. Everybody needs a little help, especially agents. They need help too. They need help too.
It's just a bizarre life. And I was going to ask you, by the way, because I know you've worked with Beth Henley a number of times, and now I understand why. I was going to say, you guys must get along really well. And obviously you did.
Well, we did at the time. It was like, Beth Beth and I knew each other in college. So I was a sophomore and she was a freshman. And when I fell in love with her, it was kind of like love at first sight. The beginning of my sophomore year at college was enormously stressful because, of course, when you're a freshman, nobody gets any parts, right? You're always a spear carrier when you're a freshman in a college
Yes,
drama
we have to break
program.
you of your bad habits. And
the seniors and the grad students, they get all the leading roles. And occasionally they give you 2 or 3 lines here or there when you're a freshman. But now my sophomore year, I was thinking, now I could get a part. What if I get nothing? What if my career doesn't take off? And I was so stressed the first day of school, where just kind of the meet and greet. I ran from the green room up the spiral staircase. To the left goes to the proscenium theater. To the right went to the little experimental theater, the Margot Jones Theater. I ran into the Margot Jones Theater. There was just a ghost light on stage with, if people don't know, that's just a light on a stick kind of in the middle of the stage, but the whole place was black. And I go up into the seats and I just sit in the darkness and I'm going to like just pray to whatever spirits may be, saying, will my future happen here in this theater, on this stage this year? And while I'm there in the middle of this silent prayer, the stage door opens and closes. I'm thinking it's security coming in to throw me out. And instead, it's this girl who walks out on stage and she looks out. She doesn't see me because I'm in the darkness. I'm in the dark and she's in the ghost light on stage. And suddenly she starts acting like she's on a tightrope. And she like walks across the stage, losing her balance, regaining her balance, for an audience of no one, but I'm in the darkness watching her. And then she jumps to the imaginary safety of the other end of the stage, bows to no one, and runs out of the theater. And I fell in love. And I'm going like, who is that girl? Who the hell is that girl? Who is that girl? And I keep asking, I go, I don't know who this person was, but she has kind of blonde hair and she's short. And you know, at SMU in Texas, all freshman girls were short and had blonde hair. I mean, that's just what happens in Texas.
Yeah, it kind of makes sense.
In drama department. But I eventually tracked her down, and Beth and I became boyfriend and girlfriend for quite a long time. And she was one of these people that was a good actress, but never really was cast in anything. And then we ended up going to graduate school together at the University of Illinois. And Claudia Riley was the only playwriting student in all of everything at the University of Illinois. 30,000 students, one student in playwriting. That was Claudia Riley. And Claudia asked Beth and I if we would read a part in her play, which we did one night. And then Beth and I are walking back to our apartment on campus, and she said, you know, what Claudia did was very brave. I go, I'm sorry, what did Claudia do that was brave? Well, she's a playwright. That's very, well, I said, I don't know what's so brave about it. I mean, they have a playwriting class. She's a playwriting major, so she wrote a play. I mean, I don't get, but she's a woman. She's a woman. She did that. I go, baby, it's a different world. Men are strippers. Women are rodeo riders. You know, anybody could do anything you want. You know, it's like, I still don't understand what's brave. And she said, well, I think maybe instead of being an actor, I should be a playwright. I go, sure, but you could make a steadier living if you went into being a dental hygienist. But go ahead. Whatever you want to do, write a play, whatever. So I came out to Los Angeles, and Beth had a family tragedy at the time where her grandfather went missing. And so she started writing this play called Old Granddaddy's Dying. And then she changed it to Three Mississippi Sisters because she liked Chekhov's play, The Three Sisters. So she got called The Three Mississippis. And so I'm thinking, so she's typing in the living room, and I said, well, can I read Old Granddaddy's Dying or whatever? And she goes, sure. So I start reading this play. I'm going like, oh my God. This thing is the Golden Fleece. This is brilliant. It's not just good. It's not just enjoyable. This play is brilliant. And Beth is typing away. She's not finished with the play yet. And I'm reading the pages, and it was like, come together right now. I mean, she finishes the last page, hands it to me out of the typewriter as I'm getting to the end of the play. I read the end. I start screaming, my God. I said, Beth, this is so phenomenal. I said, I promise you, this play is going to end up on Broadway. This play is going to be on Broadway. No question about it. But you cannot call it Old Granddaddy's Dying. You can't call Three Mississippi. This play needs a name that's good. And so anyway, she said, well, I'm not good at names. You come up with a name. So I came up with Crimes of Passion. And so that was the name of her play, Crimes of Passion. And so we were going to do an equity waiver version of Crimes of Passion here in Hollywood. And the girl who was playing Meg, Sharon Ulrich, who's an actress in New York now, she gave Crimes of Passion to her agent, who didn't read it, and gave it to his boyfriend, which happened to be Gilbert Parker, who always came to get Richard's plays that he liked and read them on the plane from L.A. to New York. And the first play he happened to read was Crimes of Passion. And we get a phone call from Gilbert Parker from Kennedy Airport saying, is Beth Henley around? And I go, yeah, just a second. And I'm looking at Beth's face as she's hearing this, and it's like the most, I don't know if it's like, and I'm going like, what is going on? Is there a plane crash? What? And she hangs up the phone and she said, that was Gilbert Parker. He is the agent for Lillian Hellman and worked with Tennessee Williams. And now he says, Mark Medoff, and now he wants to be my agent for Crimes of Passion. But he says the play can't be Crimes of Passion because they're just doing a movie, Crimes of Passion, and the title's taken. You can't copyright a title, but we don't want people, we need a new title. So I'm in the car driving around, and we're all in this crazy kind of hysteria of like, what just happened to us? What just happened to her? And I said, how about, there's a trial in the play, Crimes of Passion, where Babe shoots her husband. I know lawyer talk would be that they say this was another thing of Crimes of Passion could be Crimes of the Heart. So why don't we just call it Crimes of the Heart? So it became Crimes of the Heart, and it ended up winning the Pulitzer Prize. Yep. And Beth was also nominated for a Tony Award, and I think she also did not win. I think that year it was won by Nicholas Nickleby, and Beth looked at me and said, like, I just got beat by Charles Dickens.
That's great.
Oh, it was such an amazing, because Beth looked like, this little wastrel, the way she always dressed, like with her clothes seemed to be like Raggedy Ann, Raggedy Andy, like no real style. And we went to the opening night of Crimes of the Heart on Broadway, and the woman, everybody comes to your play when you're on Broadway. And the person who came to Crimes of the Heart was Claudia Riley from the University of Illinois. The one who inspired, the one writing student. And Claudia looked like a writer. I mean, Claudia was kind of taller than Beth and had that sharp cut blonde hair and was wearing all black clothes and this. I mean, she looked like an author of the New York Magazine or what. Yeah, I mean, she had the look. And so we're at intermission of Crimes of the Heart, on Broadway in New York, talking to Claudia Riley. Beth and I and Claudia, and this group of women came up and pushed Beth aside and said, "Excuse me, sweetheart. We know Beth Henley from Mississippi, and if you excuse, we just want to say hello to her." So they all gathered around Claudia and started talking, and Claudia's just like, Claudia's just smiling and listening, and she's, "I'm just going to let you ladies keep talking, and you're going to find out what you just did, and I want to be here and watch that." That's going to be fabulous.
That's a class act. That's a class move.
Oh, and Claudia ended up writing a few plays, but she ended up working for Modern Library in New York as one of their editors. So she had a career in writing as well in New York City. So she is a class act all the way. Great writer, great person, and a wonderful sense of humor.
And Beth Henley, not too shabby a writer either.
No, not at all. But who knew?
She's had a few successes here and there, you know.
Who knew? Who knew?
No.
And there you have part one of my conversation with character actor par extraordinaire Steve Tobolowsky. Stephen is a wonderful guy. He is a talented guy. So you really should come back and hear the rest of our conversation. You also, if you get a chance, might want to tune into his podcast, The Tobolowsky Files, where Stephen tells stories about his life, kind of like he was just doing with me, only not with me. Anyway, that's that. Now, I promised a rant, or I think I promised a rant, and I have a rant, because I haven't done one fully in a while, and I am steamed up. You know, there's news we all know about. Andrew Cuomo resigning. Ugh, he was a power-mad, arrogant prick. And I say that as a native New Yorker who believes that his father, Mario Cuomo, was probably the greatest governor of New York in my lifetime. His son, unfortunately, did not match up. And now we're going to, or not we, because I don't live in New York anymore, but now New York is going to have its first female governor. And I don't know much about her, so I'm just keeping my fingers crossed. One thing I'm fairly certain of, she won't be putting her hand down other women's blouses, you know, like Mr. Cuomo. Also, other stories, you know, I'm still out of my mind with anger about the fact that after the testimony of the 4 Capitol police officers, the Rethugla QAnons in Congress pretended that they didn't watch the hearings or that what they said was a joke and didn't matter and it wasn't real. I mean, who was it? One of them said, you know, it was, come on, January 6th wasn't an insurrection. It was like a tourist's, you know, a normal tourist day. Are you fucking kidding me? These guys risked their lives for the members of Congress. And it seems only the Democratic members realize that or care about it, because the Rethugla QAnons obviously do not. And, you know, when you hear those bastards talk about Blue Lives Matter, they're full of shit. They don't give a damn about blue lives, except as they can scare or influence people to support them. And it astounds me what these people are. And I'm talking about the Marjorie Taylor Greens and the Matt Gaetzes and the Boeberts, and I could go on and on. They are fascists. There's no other word to use. Well, there is one word for some of them, but I don't know it for sure. So I won't call them Nazis, but I wouldn't be surprised if there were Nazis among them. Anyway, the fact that not one of those bastards has been indicted yet or arrested kind of it makes me nervous. Now, I know a lot of people are saying that the DOJ is actually investigating and they're being very careful and very quiet until they're ready to start handing out indictments and making arrests. And I hope that's the case, because something has to be done, and not next week or next month or in 2022, because as far as I'm concerned, 2022 is too late. If something isn't done, and if Twitler and his hench people are not made to pay the price for their crimes, we will lose our democracy. It's as simple as that. But that's not my rant. No, my rant is about a couple of stories that have not gotten the play that I think they deserve, at least not nationwide. And it is an example of why I say we're not in a post-racial America. The Supreme Court is full of shit. There is still, racism doesn't even begin to describe what's going on. Because let's face it, from 2016 to 2020, or January of this year, we had a guy sitting in the Oval Office who made it okay to hate, and made it okay to say how much you hated Black people or Jews or whatever. That's what we've been living with. And here are two stories that highlight that did not get the play. First of all, St. Louis, Missouri. A group of people were gathering to protest police brutality. Okay, yeah, St. Louis, yeah, police brutality. So the police assigned two officers. One of them, Luther Hall, is Black. They were assigned to infiltrate the protest. When I say that, I'm reminded of 1968 Chicago, the cops and the FBI infiltrating the hippies and yippie movements. But here we are in 2021, and St. Louis Police Department is infiltrating and videotaping citizens exercising their constitutional right to gather to protest police brutality. And Officer Luther Hall, a Black officer, was one of the people assigned to do the infiltration. Okay. So what Officer Hall didn't know at the time is that several of his fellow St. Louis officers, a guy named Christopher Myers, was emailing with some of his other fellow officers, talking about how they were really pumped because that night they were going to go out there and get to beat the fucking shit out of these protesters. Their words, not mine. So out they went into the protest. And who did they happen to stumble upon? Well, gosh, it just happened to be undercover officer Luther Hall. So what did Officer Christopher Myers, Randy Hayes, and Bailey Coletta do? Not knowing that Officer Hall was an officer, they rushed him. They pulled him out of his vehicle and then proceeded to throw him on the ground and beat the ever-living shit out of him. They smashed his skull into the ground twice, blood gushing out of his face. The three men surrounded him and continued to pound him with their fists, their batons, their boots, beating him to a pulp. Why? Because he was Black, and because they didn't know he was a fellow officer. And what did the St. Louis Police Department do about it after the fact? Not a goddamn thing. They were going to cover it up and let it go. Only one problem. The FBI had the emails from Officer Myers and Hayes and Coletta saying what they planned to do. And then, of course, the video that showed them doing exactly what they said they were going to do. Only when the FBI alerted the St. Louis Police Department about that did they take action and fire these 3 motherfuckers. Only then. If Officer Hall had not been a police officer and the FBI had not stepped in, the St. Louis Police Department would have done nothing. Nothing to protect the rights of a black citizen. And then, for the justice in St. Louis, well, the one officer I know of who has been tried, Randy Hayes, was sentenced to 4.5 years, which may sound like a lot, but for something pre-planned and an act that heinous and violence and breaking his oath as an officer of the law, he got 4.5 years, which, by the way, is less than half of what the prosecutors were asking for. If you want to know why the black citizens of this country are in fear of police officers, this should be a pretty fucking good indication of why. People of color in this country are threatened every day in all 50 states. And this isn't the only story I've got, because after that happened in St. Louis, we have an incident in Wyoming, Michigan, where a real estate agent, Eric Brown, who happens to be black, was showing a house to a friend of his, a guy he'd known since they were teenagers, and an Army veteran, Roy Thorne, who was there with his 15-year-old son looking at a home. What happened? Well, you can probably guess. Some neighbor called the police, 911, and said, "This house is being burglarized." Why? Because, my God, there were 3 black men there. It was a home for sale. It didn't occur to them that maybe they were looking at the house. Because why would a black man and his son look for a house in Wyoming, Michigan? So the house was surrounded by Wyoming police cars, police officers with their guns drawn, who ordered the 3 men out of the house at gunpoint, handcuffed them, and put them in 3 separate police vehicles. And it took 20 minutes, maybe more, before they realized they'd made a mistake, even though the 3 people were saying, "You're making a mistake." Why did this happen? Because they were black. There's no other reason. You have a man who'd been selling real estate in that area for 20 years. You have an Army veteran and his son looking at a house, being shown the house by the real estate agent who he'd been friends with since they were teenagers. And all it took is one suspicious neighbor who just happened to be white to place a call to 911 for this house to be surrounded by officers with their guns drawn. This is appalling, and if you're not appalled by it, there is something wrong with you. Mr. Thorne told a reporter who was white that, yeah, he thought it happened because they were black. Well, the Wyoming Police Department says the reason it happened is because the house had been burglarized the month before. Even though, gee, there seems to be no evidence of that. But hey, that's what they said. Anyone who believes race did not play a part in it is either being naive or pretending, because of course it did. Of course it did. Look, I'm Jewish, but I'm white, and I get white privilege. I don't have to be terrified that my life is in jeopardy when I see a police officer, even though when I do, I kind of get nervous, like a lot of people do. But if you're black, you live under that daily. Every single day of your life, you do not know What's going to happen to you? What's going to happen to your kids? Because we don't live in a post-racial America. We live in a racist America where these racists have been told and encouraged to express their racism by arresting innocent people and beating the shit out of other cops simply because of the color of their skin. This has got to stop. If you want to know why there is a Black Lives Matters movement in this country, these two stories are a drop in the bucket. Every single day, all 50 states, you can find a story like this. It's got to stop. If we want to live in a democracy, and I put quotes around that because it's not a democracy. It really isn't. You know, it's akin to a democracy, maybe, but let's face it. America has never been a democracy, and it certainly isn't now. We have the opportunity to recreate this country and make it one. But if we don't do it now, we're going to lose whatever shreds of democracy we have. And it's going to be our own faults because we let it happen. So it's time for all of us to put some skin in the game and to take care of our brothers and sisters of color, because God knows the police departments aren't, and the government of the United States, even though there are some people like Jamie Raskin and AOC and many others on the Democratic side who I respect and who I know want the changes made. But you also have Democrats like Kristen Sinema and Joe Manchin who are faux Democrats, which is why the Democrats can't pass necessarily all the things that need to be passed. And President Biden needs to realize this, he needs to understand it, and he needs to take action. And when I say action, I mean executive action. God knows that tangerine shithead signed executive orders left and right. And President Biden did the same his first couple weeks in office. Well, he needs to keep it up. He can't stop, because if he stops, this country is doomed. That's my opinion, but I know a lot of people who share it. So that, my friends, is my rant for today. Now that I've gotten that off my chest, please come back and join me for part 2 of my conversation with Stephen Tobolowsky. Well worth your time. And in the meantime, if you want to get a hold of the show or me, you can always email us at accordingtoyoni@gmail.com. Say nice things. I like nice things. I'm not really into hate, hate emails. You can also contact us via Twitter, According to Yoni, our Facebook page, also According to Yoni, or the world According to Yoni, but the username is According to Yoni. And we're even on Instagram now. Woohoo! I think I said that last week when we were like a day or two into it. But now I've been there for a little over a week and there are pictures up. So take a look and follow me or friend me and like the show and subscribe to the show. That way I won't have to deal with some of the trolls I've been dealing with who mock me because he doesn't see the numbers that a real show would be getting. At least that's what I was told in a comment left. In any event, thank you for being here. Thank you for joining me. In the meantime, until next time, stay safe, stay sane, and as I have stolen from Billy Joel, don't take any shit from anyone. Thank you, and I will hope to see you next week. Bye-bye.